Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Quartile, where we bring you stories from the front lines of growth. For this episode, I'm your host, Dan Marks, a partner and EVP here, and we are kicking off 2022. It's hard to believe we're sitting here talking about 2022. It seems like 2021 flew by, but we are. And to do that, we've got a great show lined up. We brought back several guests that appeared in the first year's show to do a roundtable discussion. First, we covered some lessons learned from 2021. If you haven't checked that out, we got a link in the show notes or down below. And today we're talking about future trends big trends that are going to impact 2022. And so our thought leaders are we're just going to do a roundtable and get their perspective. And so first up, Sarah, what big trend are you looking at for 2022?
So for several years now, there's been an increased interest in ESG, so environmental, social governance issues. And for the first time ever, that was on our strategic plan. And we think that we'll get more information about what will be required of organizations to report. But even bigger, we're just seeing a lot of interest into associates, clients, investors. They want to know, what good are you doing for the world? What is your purpose? What's your vision? How are you making the world a better place? What industries are you financing and what are they doing to make the world a better place? And so I think that's a trend that will play out over the next 5 years, where companies are going to have to produce larger impact reports, more detailed impact reports that aren't just out of the marketing department. They're going to have to be grounded in true data and results.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's certainly been a rising trend over the years and definitely is going to have a big impact in 2022. And so it's great to see companies that are really doing good in the community having an impetus to get more credit for that and get some more visibility to the good stuff that they're doing. So thanks for highlighting that. And next up, Rick, what are you looking at that you think is going to have a big impact in 2022?
I think the big thing next year to keep an eye on is inflation. And what we've seen pretty consistently now for about 15 months, really since a lot of the stimulus money started to work its way through the economy, both in the forms of PPP, but direct payments to individuals and families. We've seen a lot of excess liquidity building up on the balance sheet, and it's noticeable. It's not kind of an aberration. It's here. It's been here for a while. And frankly, it's probably here to stay, and it creates a unique challenge for, again, community banks and credit unions who have to find a way to lend that money out. And it's one of the places big banks have a significant advantage because they can do commercial loans of large scales, and that's just not applicable to a lot of the folks in the community bank and the credit union space. So with inflation, it really makes you wonder, if things, if gas is $3, $4 a gallon. And you go through a lot of other commodities and find the same thing with kind of everyday purchases that people are using. A couple of things will happen. Interchange on credit card and debit card revenue should be up. Those tickets should be higher next year. And that's a good news when it comes into fee income. But at some point in time, that also should have a pay down effect towards the amount of excess liquidity that's on the balance sheet. The money, it's got to go out. If things cost more, the money's got to go somewhere. So it'll be really interesting to see if that comes down in a meaningful way. And it's something that bankers really have to keep an eye on as they're managing their liquidity risk going forward. And then the last part is, you couple that and say, well, if the Fed begins to take action and raises interest rates on top of that, it's going to create a whole new dynamic. And it's not a dynamic that a lot of people have had to manage through in the past many years.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. We are fortunate to work with some great banks and credit unions all over the country and see very granular information. And you're right, the impact of inflation and how that's changing customer behavior, member behavior. And I think you're right that it's going to have a big impact in 2022. So thanks for that. Delynn, what are you looking at?
I think it ties along with, like I said, the shifting perspective of consumers. But I know one big thing I'm personally going to be watching is the open banking and the rise of the fintechs and the neobanks, because when you talk about shifting someone's perspective of how they can bank and what they can do, they're really pushing some boundaries. They're really making consumers highly aware of what they can do. And for me as a marketer, the way that influences me is I need to pay attention to what messages they're using to promote their growth. How are they communicating what their appeal is and how they can solve a problem, because they're probably solving that problem for some of my members. And if I have that same solution and I have that same capability, then I need to be sure that not necessarily to copycat them, but to understand the efficacy of their messaging, and then how can I apply that same efficacy to my messaging to make sure that my members and my potential members understand you can do the same thing with us that you can do with them. Plus, you also have all these added benefits of we are a brick and mortar financial institution. So if you do have a question, there is a phone number you can call. It's not, if you want to chat, great. But if not, and you want to call, or you do actually need to go physically somewhere to get help, we're here. So, trying to marry that being very digitally forward with also providing that level of security that folks expect from someplace that they may do the majority of their financial business with.
Yeah, Delynn, absolutely. We've got a lot more players in the financial services space, and we can definitely learn from the innovation. Some cases it's a partnering with, and some part it's learning from, and some part it's highlighting some of the unique local value that we offer. So thanks for highlighting that. Next up, John Oxford, out of the box thinker and author. John, what big trend are you looking at?
So this is kind of something I've been talking about for a while is the name of banks. I still think it hasn't been fleshed out enough. There are over 100 banks with the name First. And I've started calling them First Blanks instead of First Banks because they don't have a brand. They're just first this, first that. And you've got your Ameris banks, your Renasant, your Regions, your Truist. Whether you like made up names or some of these names or not, they are unique in that they're owned as an individual brand. And I think going forward, the stronger brand names for banks, and as there's more consolidation coming, branding is going to be super important. And especially as people can just go online now and open an account and look at different ways of moving money, whether it be a Zelle or a Venmo. A lot of times they don't think about brand as much, which makes branding that much more important. Because if you have a strong brand, the Walmarts, the Amazons, as global brands, they're thought of first when you want to purchase something. I think the same thing with banks. These stronger banks with stronger brands will be the first choice of customers. And it's only going to get harder to brand as banks recognize this and figure it out. So again, the naming of banks is what I'm watching, and how banks change to become more unique in their brands moving forward to set themselves apart from the other 4,000 or so banks out there. Who really wants to be a brand and who wants to just be a bank?
Always great to count on John for some big ideas, and you're absolutely right about the impact of brand. You're probably saying that just because Renasant has an awesome name, but we still agree with the trend. So thanks for that, John. And then speaking of branding impact, Kyle, I think you got some interesting thoughts there.
There are a lot of large mergers and acquisitions that have gone on in 2021. A lot of them are trickling over into 2022. We actually had some challenges with the hurricane and the weather that came through our region. We're in the southeastern United States, and so that has pushed one of the big mergers that we're working on out into 2022. But some of the big ones going on now are moving out, and we've seen that a lot of the banks are partnering, merging, or being acquired, and those that are not, a lot of the community banks that are not, they're refreshing their brands, whether they're going in and refreshing what they've already got at their locations, or whether they're re-imaging. We've seen a lot of that where people are working with marketing and branding groups to re-image their design and get a fresh look, and we're very fortunate to be a part of a lot of that going into 2022, and I think we're going to continue to see that. Signage is an important piece of it. The exterior of your facility, how do we create that feel where when you pull up to the branch, you get the same experience from the exterior to the interior? And I think banks are seeing and realizing that is an important piece of the puzzle, and they're doing something about that, and I think we're going to see a lot of that in 2022.
Yeah, Kyle, great points about just mergers and the impact and some key considerations on how the brand shows up in the physical community. So thanks for that. Douglas?
It's a big trend watching going into 2022. Obviously, looking at it, a number of things. COVID deaths per 1 million, the inflation rate, and a number of things. But one I'm keenly watching that the Federal Reserve as a whole is watching is not only unemployment rate, but the Black unemployment rate. And I know that Chair Jerome Powell has spoken about it and said that, as we look at our dual mandate and moving towards maximum sustainable employment, but also stable prices, but on the employment goal of looking at Black employment and having that as a key measure where, we look at it now and where we sit, we're December 3rd, so hey, the world may change and may change quickly, but today, December 3rd, as we look at it, the overall Black unemployment is 6.7%, and that's a change from 10.3% last year. But as you compare that to overall unemployment, where we're at 4.2% now, but in November of last year, it's the same place that Black unemployment is this year, 6.7%. So as you look, you see the difference in the gulf between those two numbers, and understand that it's extremely important to be able to look at it because of the lag of being able to see how people perform in the economy. We've seen a drastic difference between individuals, not just based upon race, but also based upon income level. That folks that are making more than say $60,000 a year, vastly different outcome for them. A lot of the pandemic is the effect of the pandemic on their employment and workplace is over. If you're lower income, making less than $27,000 a year, then the pandemic is still with you. You still see unemployment rates that are, are very staggering for a number of those individuals. So looking at a key indicator and something I continue to look at for 2022 is the Black unemployment rate.
Yeah, Douglas, thanks for that. The Fed's got a very important dual mandate, and I'm glad you're thinking about how that impacts all areas of society. So thanks for that feedback. Tim.
Yeah, the huge thing, I think, for those involved in the banking industry and whatever side of it is what's going to happen with interest rates and how that's going to be affected by inflation, and then how that is going to correspond or not with economic growth. And so are we going to see interest rates rise quicker than we originally expected based on inflation? And what's that going to do in terms of competition for deposit funding? And how's that going to correspond or not with loan demand? These are huge, gigantic factors that are going to affect the banking and credit union business in 2022. And there's probably more uncertainty about those factors going into this next year than there's been in the any time you can think of. I've been in banking for 30 years. So that's a huge question mark. If you look at what the Fed is saying, they don't seem to really be sure. So that's, we're going to be nimble with our clients, helping clients use data to respond in whatever the scenario is. And that's a key part of the value we try to bring to clients, is being adaptable and flexible in all kinds of different, potential scenarios in terms of continuing to grow deposits and loans.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Certainly in an era of rising inflation, that's going to have an impact on interest rates, like you said, and we already see the Fed, making some very strong signals in that regard, and so that's going to have an impact on everything that we do. Certainly, loan demand, deposit pricing, overall consumer behavior, the full gamut. So thanks for highlighting that important trend. And last up, Will.
The ability of smaller companies or newer companies to apply technology on a customized basis with customer interfacing, transactions. It's really cool to see what people are doing, and companies that are just, we've done it this way for 50 years. I don't know how they're going to survive. I really don't. You think of large retailers and small retailers, and they're people that are just killing it out in the world because they've mastered the ability to have the customer have a different experience by applying technology. But at the end of the day, it's all relationships and people. Whether it's whether you're selling cars online, or banking services. It's all the same. And I think that that's the big trend. And I think that despite what people say that we're going to end up with, I'll just say for banking, we're going to end up like Canada and have 7 banks. I see community banks really embracing technology now. The guys I talk to, I have a lot of friends in banking, talk to people fairly frequently, and their ability and desire to embrace all this. It's expensive, but they know basically what they need to do, and it's exciting to see what they're doing. I'm excited for them. And then there are all kinds of new companies popping up, doing different stuff, different things, different ways. You got trucking companies that are doing portals for customers, and it's just all kinds of cool stuff. And it's fun to see all that.
Yeah, well said, Will. So technology provides some really exciting new ways to connect better with customers and power the way that we connect with them and deliver really some even better experiences if we're willing to use the tools and think kind of differently. And so that's a that perspective just kind of ties together a lot of things that we're talking about here. And so as Tim said, this is a dynamic year. Tim and Rick with inflation and the impact on interest rates and the particular environment that we face in 2022, we haven't really faced in probably 30 years or so. And so a lot of new technology that won't be exactly like the past, but there is an echo. And so as we think about all the new exciting things, it's probably a good year to sort of reach in the history books and consider some lessons and tactics from other similar time periods. And the other part, my takeaway with all these great perspectives from thought leaders all over the country and different types of institutions is dynamicism. And so, when there's different scenarios, when we're not sure exactly the path the future takes, is having scenarios and having kind of a flexible playbook to think in advance what we might do if interest rates take a particular path or a different path, for example. And so, that theme of flexibility and adaptability into a very dynamic environment is you see in the perspectives here. And so, as we kick off 2022, just another exciting year. We look forward to partnering with you. If you have a suggestion for a guest on Top Quartile, please shoot that to me. We always love to talk to interesting people from around the industry. If you just want to connect with us and learn more about what we do, we'd love to have that conversation. Check out our website, the links in the show notes, and or hit us up on LinkedIn or phone call, email, whatever works sense for you. And so thanks, and we look forward to 2022.